The University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point Northern Aquaculture Demonstration Facility introduces the Walleye Video Manual, a series of instructional videos on intensive culture. Video 6, Walleye Larval Room Standard Operating Procedures. Daily cleaning, water quality monitoring, feeding, and mortality quantification generally takes about 6 to 8 man-hours per day for a larval room consisting of around 20 tanks. At UWSP NADF, at least 2 technicians will work in the room for several hours each morning. Each day before cleaning, water temperature, oxygen, pH, and turbidity of several tanks should be monitored to verify safe ranges. UWSP NADF uses a YSI Pro dissolved oxygen meter to monitor both temperature and oxygen, a pinpoint pH meter to monitor pH, and a 2020 Lamotte or Hawk turbidity reader to check turbidity in the tanks. Clay is used to increase water turbidity in the tanks. We will discuss clay setup later in this video manual. To check turbidity, a clean vial should be rinsed out with fresh water, which can be taken from the spray bar. The vial is then dipped into the larval tank to obtain a sample from the middle of the water column. The vial should be then capped and dried with a paper towel to remove excess water and fingerprints. A pipette may be a cleaner method to obtain a water sample from the middle of the tank's water column, also making sure that the pipette and vial is cleaned with fresh water before obtaining the next sample. Before scanning the sample, the turbidity meter should first read a blank or clear sample at 0 NTUs to be calibrated. This is done by entering a scan blank option. After the blank sample is scanned, the tank sample can then be placed in the meter. Press Scan Sample. The meter will measure the tank's turbidity in NTUs. As mentioned in the Walleye Culture Manual, larval tanks at UWSP NADF maintains 50 to 80 NTUs of turbidity inside the culture tanks. After verifying the turbidity level of your system, it is time to begin cleaning the system. First, determine if the fry are photopositive or photonegative. If fry are still attracted to light, they will appear at the surface of the water when the light is turned up. Generally, fry will be photopositive for the first several weeks. After that, they become photonegative and also skittish, moving away from the surface when the lights are turned up or swim away as you near the tank. If fry are still attracted to light, as shown here, turn the lights up for cleaning to keep fry off the bottom during siphoning. If fry do not appear at the surface, keep the lights dim during cleanings. Various tools are used for cleaning each larval tank, including a 12 to 16 inch squeegee, a scrub pad, and a siphon tool. The siphon tool is made from a door flap, which is bent into a 90-degree corner and fastened to a piece of metal for support. The rubber flap rests on the bottom of the tank during the cleanings. Metal piping is utilized for a handle, and a 1/2 inch clear airline tubing is used for siphoning waste. A weight is also taped to the end of the tubing that will help keep the tubing in the bucket during siphoning. Looking at the underside of the siphoning tool, you can see the airline tubing is cut at an angle and adhered in place to stay in the corner. To begin tank cleaning, start with scrubbing around the tank at the water line with the scrub pad to remove buildup. The large squeegee can then be used to clean the sides of the tank, reaching from the bottom of the tank up to near the water line. The length of the squeegee is needed to clean the length of the tank wall in one swipe. When fry are young, it is important to scrub and squeegee slowly to give the fish enough time to swim away from the tank wall. Next, remove the inflow pipe and clean it with the scrub pad. This is set aside to make room for siphoning. If there are more than one person in the room, these initial cleaning steps can be done consecutively to each tank by the first worker. The second worker can then follow, performing the siphoning cleaning, which we will share next. The next step involves siphoning dead fry and debris from the bottom of the larval tank. If fry are young, they may be small enough to escape under the center screen. For the first week or two, this escapement number has to be checked. The center screen debris is siphoned into a pail or a 5-gallon bucket. Each tank gets its own bucket for the center screen siphoning to be counted separately. Each bucket of siphoned material is poured through a fine gravel sifter screen. The fry will be caught by the sifter, which is then sprayed into a white tub to count the fry. Young dead fry are difficult to see. Sometimes only a set of black eyeballs is visible. The other black specks may be sand or debris from the clay or paint. To count fry, look for a pair of dark eyes. A magnifier may be useful for this. There shouldn't be many escaped fry in the center screen, at least less than 20. This number should also decrease over the course of a week as the fish grow and can no longer escape underneath the screen. If there continues to be fry escaping after about a week, make sure that the screens are flush with the bottom of the tank, or check your technique for changing screens, discussed later. Once no more fry are observed in the center screen, usually within a week, this step of siphoning the center screen can be skipped. Next, the bottom of the tank needs to be siphoned. Make sure you have an empty bucket designated for that tank's siphoned material. Place the bottom siphon tool into the tank with the flap side down as shown, until the flaps are flush with the tank bottom. Start the siphon into the bucket. Once the siphon is going, slowly begin to pull the siphon flaps along the bottom of the tank, starting up against the wall. Make sure that the door flaps are always touching the bottom of the tank and is angled correctly so that the flaps are flush with the tank bottom. If there is a lot of clay and debris, the tubing can clog. It is important to move the siphon slowly along the bottom. You may need to occasionally wiggle the tubing and make sure the debris is flowing through. If the siphon tool is working correctly, you will be able to see the debris flowing through the clear tubing consistently. If you are not seeing darker clay water or debris, you do not have the flaps flush with the bottom of the tank. It is beneficial to reach down and feel where the tool is hitting the tank bottom. Looking at the bottom of the tool, the flaps act like a plow, so that as the bottom debris hits the flaps, it is directed to the center towards the tubing, where it can then be siphoned through the tubing. When siphoning the tank bottom, start at the outer tank wall, and as you circle around the bottom, move towards the middle of the tank until the tool meets the center screen. This should take at least 3 or 4 tank cycles. Again, it is important to move the tool slowly around the tank so fry can swim away, and also to prevent stirring up the debris or clogging the siphon. During the last cycle, most of the siphon water should be free of fungus and clay masses running through the tubing. If it is not, continue to go around the tank until the tubing appears clean. When finished, pull the siphon tool straight up and out of the tank. The bucket of siphoned water is then poured through the sifter, same as before, only there will be more debris and water to screen. A garden hose with the sprayer nozzle helps to clean out most of the clay from the debris. As the fish get larger and densities are higher, this process can get difficult. The debris left in the sifter is then again sprayed off into a white bin to view mortalities. It is also good to note changes in fungus levels and amount of leftover feed. It is helpful to use the tweezers or a similar tool to pull apart the debris to observe and count mortalities. After fry mortality is counted and recorded for each tank, the center screens need to be changed and disinfected. At least 2 screens of each size should be designated for each larval tank. One that is being used in the tank, and one that is disinfected for the next day's use. To change screens, a large 6-inch pipe is used with a rubber flapped bottom. This pipe slides over the screen to be changed with the rubber flap down. Once the rubber flap is resting at the bottom of the tank, hold the pipe in place while pulling the old screen out and set it aside. Hold the pipe in place as the new screen is slid into place. It helps to gently spin and slowly push the new screen over the PVC holder. Do not force the screen in place, this can cause the screen to fold. Once the screen is secured, the pipe can be slowly lifted out of the tank. Make sure the screen is flush with the bottom of the tank so that no fish are escaping. You may need to reach down to verify the screen reaches the bottom of the tank. The used screens are cleaned and disinfected to be ready for the next day's use. First, spray all the screens down to remove most of the fungus and debris. Screens are then placed in an aquaculture-approved iodine disinfectant at 100 parts per million for 15 minutes. A garbage tub works well to submerge the entire screens for the 15 minutes. After disinfection, rinse the screens again and place them next to each tank for tomorrow's cleaning. The tanks have now been fully cleaned. The inflow pipe needs to be replaced and positioned correctly to create a radial flow as mentioned in the previous video. Lastly, feeders need to be cleaned and prepared for the next day's feed ration. Feed is measured out for each tank based on the number of fry stocked and mortality counts. Refer to the manual on feeding ratios and rates. After the feed is measured out for each tank, it is placed on the feeders. To ensure the feeder dispenses properly, the feed should be around the outer rim of the platform. This way it does not build up in the center, but will be pushed off into the tank. A small paintbrush works well for positioning the feed around the outer edge of the platform. It is also important to brush off any feed that falls onto the feeders to prevent mold and rancid feed from falling into the tanks. After cleaning and feeding, disinfecting the floors in the larval room is important to lower fungus and mold. Lastly, dim the lights back down if they were turned up, and check each tank to ensure feeders have feed, screens are properly placed, and inflow pipes have been returned. To finish up the larval system duties, clay must be added to ensure turbidity stays at an accurate level. We will discuss this in the next video. This concludes the video on larval system operating procedures. Continue to the next video on turbidity in the larval system.